Hallo, a croeso, and siambraya frenhines Elizabeth. Blanche Parry ydw I, a brif fonyddwr. Hello and welcome to the chambers of Queen Elizabeth. I am Blanche Parry, her Chief Gentlewoman. You may not have heard of me, yet I am one of the most influential Welsh women. And let's not forget Wales's importance, being the birthplace of the Tudor dynasty. It is suggested that the young Elizabeth learnt her Welsh from being rocked to sleep by Welsh lullabies. I was a devoted and faithful servant to Elizabeth from her birthplace to my grave. But possibly I am more famous for something that I donated to my local parish church, which, after having seen many years of service, caused quite a stir in historical circles. But more of that later. I was born in 1507 or 1508 at Newcourt, Bacton, in Herefordshire's Golden Valley, within the Welsh Marches. My family having close connections with the House of York and the Herberts of Ragland. My mother was Alice Milburn and my father Henry Miles. Our Welsh name, being a Parry, was adapted to the English version Parry later. I was bilingual, being able to speak in Welsh and English, and I was educated, along with my sisters, by the Augustinian nuns of Aikenbury. It was said that I was elegant, meticulous, fair, utterly trustworthy, and devoted to Elizabeth. I was in her service for 56 years. My aunt, Blanche Herbert, Lady Troy, was in the household of her mistress to both Prince Elizabeth and her half-brother Edward. She having possibly got me the position of the infant Princess Elizabeth's rocker, and so began my long service to Her Majesty. Gradually I rose through the ranks to become the Queen's confidant, and at the centre of royal court, for many years sleeping at the bottom of her bed. I attended my mistress when she was imprisoned in the Tower of London, but that, of course, was before she became Queen. Along with my aunt, other kinsfolk of mine served Her Majesty. They were my cousins, Sir Thomas Parry, Treasurer of the household, and Dr. John Dee, who became the Queen's astronomer and astrologer. In fact, it was he who decided the date of the coronation, January the 15th. Perhaps the name that you will remember most is my cousin, Sir William Cecil. For the coronation, I was given fabrics to make a gown, 7 yards of scarlet and 15 of crimson velvet, 1¼ yards of cloth of gold with yellow, and 3/4 yard of cloth of gold with black. I was well rewarded for my service, and in 1552 my wages for 6 months was 100 shillings, and I had 30 shillings for horse fodder. A goodly sum at the time. I became Queen Elizabeth's Chief Gentlewoman and the Queen's most honourable Privy Chamber and Keeper of Her Majesty's Jewels after the death of Cat Ashley in 1565. I was also responsible for the Great Seal of England for 2 whole years, and I was overseeing the Queen's personal papers, clothes, furs, and books. Another of my duties was to write letters on the Queen's behalf and receive presentations of parliamentary bills for the Queen. This position required a great deal more than just being able to dress Her Majesty, and indeed many sought me out to make representations on their behalf to the Queen. Yes, my position was pivotal and important. I was looked up to, not least that I had made a study of palmistry, and occasionally I told the fortunes of the young maids of honour. My dear friend and king, Sir William Cecil, Lord Burleigh, and I worked closely together. It was important we were aligned, as our mistress needed aides that would be on her side and have her best interests at heart. The Queen was exceedingly kind to me, giving me clothing previously worn by Her Majesty. One of these I gave to Bacton Church. I was also given land in Herefordshire, Yorkshire and Wales. For my part, I gave the Queen a double porringer, silver boxes, 4 of them, and silver gilt covers. I also commissioned the first known map of Llangors Lake in 1584. Towards the end of my life, though, how sadly, I became blind. This robbed me not only of my embroidery, but also my gaze upon my Majesty. Having devoted my life to my mistress, and having never married, I died on the 12th of February, 1590, at the age of 82. And I was buried at St. Margaret's Church, Westminster, with the rank of Baroness. Queen Elizabeth paid for my funeral. My memorial has been moved a few times, but at first it was positioned where I could see the high altar. The expression on my face shows me concentrating through dimming eyes, looking at the high altar. Thomas Markham, Earl of Shrewsbury, recorded that Thursday last, Mrs., although I never married, Blanche Parry, departed. Blind she was here on earth, but I hope that joys in heaven she shall see. On my tomb, I am wearing the Queen's livery of black and white. There are 2 books there. They could be 2 Bibles, one in English and one in Welsh, or they could be a Bible and a prayer book. I also gave charitable contributions to the poor of Bacton and Newton, as well as divers sums of money to Westminster and other places for good uses. I also remembered Queen Elizabeth in my will. But what has ultimately made me remember now is the elaborate piece of embroidered fabric that for many years had served as an altar cloth in St. Faith's Church in Bacton. And in the early 20th century, the rector had suggested its potential association with Elizabeth I, and it was he who had it framed and put on display. But it took until the 21st century to be able to prove its provenance, a unique cloth survivor of Elizabeth's wardrobe, which at the time it was made would have had the same value as a Tudor mansion. It is worth mentioning here that the Welsh connection is strong. Because of fear of poisoning, all Elizabeth's clothes were made by trusted craftspeople. In fact, Elizabeth only had 2 embroiderers and 2 dressmakers throughout her whole reign, and we know that one of those was a Welshman, William Jones. Farewell, a dyfod gyda chi bob amser. Goodbye, and God be with you always.